Then I went back and reviewed some of the limitations of the litigation privilege, and I realized Lively may have made a big mistake.
Did Blake Lively just make a massive blunder? Word on the street is that she slipped up big time, and now everyone's talking. But here's the real shocker. Justin Baldoni, of all people, has jumped into the conversation. Yeah, when even he feels the need to weigh in, this drama is serious. So, what exactly did Blake do to go from Hollywood sweetheart to the center of controversy overnight? And could this be the start of a major image crisis for her and Ryan? Let's break it down for you.
Hugh Jackman, Wolverine, will be deposed, and I suspect that might be making Ryan Reynolds extremely nervous.
Grab your popcorn because things are starting to fall apart fast. And trust me, Justin Baldoni's jaw-dropping reaction is only adding fuel to the fire. You won't believe how quickly their perfect image is unraveling. We've got all the details coming up. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have landed themselves in a mess of their own making. They aim to come across as powerful and influential, but instead, they're looking reckless and deceptive.
Hugh Jackman appears to be tied with all of this. We have Bradley Cooper, who Blake Lively thanked in the credits for It Ends With Us, seems to be involved in all of this.
This story is so huge. It just keeps unfolding. At first, they tried to act like everything was under control, but the truth hit like a storm, throwing them completely off balance. What seemed like a minor dispute turned into a full-blown legal spectacle, one designed to mislead the public and shift the blame away from Blake and Ryan. It all started with whispers that Blake Lively was pulling strings behind the scenes, using questionable witnesses and shady legal tactics to paint herself as the victim in court.
It felt almost like nervously so from her team of how much that clearly was the most.
She seemed to believe that using fancy words and a few tears would be enough to sway the judge, but that plan completely backfired. The judge quickly saw through her attempt to twist the facts, and let's face it, juries have no patience for dishonesty or manipulation. In a courtroom, the truth always takes center stage, and trying to deceive people never ends well. The moment everyone realized what Blake Lively was up to, her carefully built reputation started falling apart fast.
So there are a number of high-profile celebrities outside of Blake and Ryan Reynolds that will be dragged into this, and there may be some discovery that gets dragged up that is linked to them.
She wanted a special set of rules just for herself, as if she didn't have to play by the same standards as everyone else. It was clear she saw herself as more important than the other side in the lawsuit, but the judge wasn't buying it. Blake's behavior raised red flags, making it obvious that she was more focused on misleading people than presenting any real evidence. On top of that, she tried to use tears in court to paint herself as a helpless victim. But it didn't take long for everyone to see through the act.
I don't know how much is going to come through in the transcript that can be read now, but audibly, because we were able to call in to that hearing and listen to it, there did seem to be a lot of stress and a lot of tension, particularly when it came to those points.
She must have thought that a few tears and some fancy legal jargon would be enough to win the case. Walking into the courtroom, she seemed confident that throwing around big words and getting emotional would sway the judge in her favor. But it was all just another performance, and a transparent one at that. People saw right through the act, and now her carefully built career is crashing down fast.
Now, the judge has ruled and does agree that high-profile third parties that are not involved directly in the lawsuit, they are entitled to some privacy. Therefore, any of their information may likely be deemed attorney's eyes only.
If Blake thought she was untouchable, she got a harsh reality check. Judge Lyman had seen enough and called out her lawsuit for what it really was, a massive media spectacle. This case was never about real justice. It was just a carefully crafted stunt to control public perception of Blake and Ryan. Unfortunately for them, the only people they ended up fooling were themselves. The harder they tried to twist the narrative in their favor, the faster it all started to unravel.
It just, given what we're looking at and what's happening and the backlash and everything else, I can't imagine Blake's celebrity friends are happy that it's gotten to this point.
The more they pushed their version of the story, the clearer it became that they had no real evidence to back it up. The judge even emphasized how crucial Blake's testimony was. But if the jury caught her in a single lie, her entire credibility would crumble. Juries don't trust people who bend the truth, and this lawsuit was nothing more than a staged spectacle disguised as a serious legal battle. And at the center of all this chaos, Blake Lively, caught in a mess of her own making.
You can only imagine what Blake Lively and Taylor Swift are texting about at any given time in the last 3 or 4 years. If we were to get our mitts on those messages, we would have to go to 5 days a week.
We would have to go to 7. It would take till the end of time to unpack the messages between Taylor and Blake in 2024.
The judge heard the arguments. I felt Friedman made the better case.
Blake was the one who set this entire fiasco in motion. And now, she's the one facing the fallout. Every attempt to twist the narrative only backfired, making things even worse for her. But that wasn't the only shocking revelation. A secret. Audio recording of Ari Emanuel, one of Hollywood's most powerful agents, surfaced, exposing the industry's hidden power plays. The recording hinted at a world where top celebrities can blacklist others for personal reasons, revealing a side of Hollywood most people never see.
Now they're going to have to prove that, and we'll have to see how much of what they share is going to be considered attorney's eyes only, or was it all BS?
In the recording, Ari Emanuel revealed that Justin Baldoni wasn't blacklisted for any wrongdoing. Instead, it was simply because he was friends with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. It seemed like they treated Hollywood as their own personal playground, pulling strings behind the scenes. This revelation changed everything. The story took an even wilder turn when people realized that Baldoni's agency, WME, cut ties with him right after Blake Lively went public with her accusations.
Both of them out. He was attempting to keep things being neutral, but there were definitely moments where Brian's arguments felt stronger than the other side.
There was never any real evidence against him. It looked like Blake and Ryan simply used their influence to sabotage his career. But the leaked audio exposed just how far they were willing to go. It proved they held serious power behind the scenes, and they weren't afraid to use it unfairly. When the judge heard the recording, it became clear that Blake's side had been manipulating the truth from the very beginning. Soon, people started calling the entire lawsuit nothing more than a carefully crafted lie.
A spokesperson for Blake says today the court rejected the Wayfair party's objections and entered the protections needed to ensure the free flow of discovery material without any risk of witness intimidation or harm to any individual's security.
The judge, the lawyers, and likely the public all saw that Blake Lively's claims didn't hold up. Even her own PR team must have realized they were on a sinking ship. And the smartest move was to distance themselves from her as quickly as possible. But the chaos didn't stop there. A Freakonomics podcast episode featured the explosive Emanuel audio clip exposing Hollywood's hidden power plays. Then, out of nowhere, that episode mysteriously disappeared without any explanation.
And he made it very clear that some of the things that Blake was afraid of coming out in court were not things that Wayfair was actively pursuing.
No one could find the episode, leaving people questioning just how much power these Hollywood elites really have. If they could erase an entire podcast episode without a trace, what else were they capable of? But while they managed to make the episode disappear, they couldn't erase the truth. The audio was already out in the open, and the damage was irreversible. This was no longer just gossip. Justin Baldoni now had solid ground to pursue legal action for the harm done to his career.
With this order in place, Miss Lively will move forward in the discovery process to obtain even more of the evidence that will prove.
With the lies against him unraveling, Blake Lively wasn't just dealing with gossip anymore. She was facing a real defamation case that could destroy her reputation for good. People began to see that she had been manipulating the narrative from the very start. While Blake liked to present herself as a brilliant actress, her most dramatic performance wasn't on screen. It was in the courtroom, where she twisted facts and spun stories. If there were an award for the most elaborate, fake lawsuit, she'd be the undisputed winner.
Of course, the internet is going to say, well, Justin Baldoni's side won here. And I think they're right.
She probably would have tried to win that award too. Blake kept changing her version of events as if she were constantly rewriting a script to fit her needs. She started with one story, then shifted to another, adding layers of exaggeration to make it sound even more dramatic. She even filed a nearly 180-page complaint, far longer than most lawsuits of this kind. It was like stretching a short story into an unnecessary novel, but it was obvious she believed that burying people in words would distract them from how flimsy her arguments really were.
We don't think we should have to present some of our text messages in discovery with our high-profile clients, that being Taylor Swift and whoever else. Some people say Bradley Cooper and whatever other friends of Blake Lively might get sucked into this.
People caught on quickly and saw it for what it was, a media stunt designed to distract from her lack of real evidence. Some legal experts even went through all 180 pages and found that most of it wasn't about legal claims at all. It read more like a press release. There was barely anything solid to back up her accusations. It became clear that this wasn't about justice. It was a calculated move to sway public opinion rather than fight a legitimate legal battle. And let's be honest, if it takes that many pages to prove something happened, maybe it never did.
If it's not relative information, we don't care. It actually proves the point of the audience, saying, well, yeah, we all love salacious stuff, but in the end, it's all about finding the truth of was she actually harassed or not.
It likely meant that nothing significant actually happened. Blake made an even bigger mistake when she tried to use a video as evidence, claiming it would expose Baldoni and ruin his reputation for good. She hyped it up as something shocking and damning, but when the full video surfaced, it told a completely different story. Instead of showing any distress, Blake was seen smiling, acting perfectly fine, and looking completely comfortable. It was the exact opposite of what she had claimed to work.
Baldoni's side argued that they think that she shouldn't receive any preferential treatment because she's famous, and we need to see all this information. We'll redact it, we'll keep it from the public, and they say, no, you'll leak it.
It was the exact opposite of what she had told everyone, a massive red flag for both the judge and the jury. If Blake could lie about this, what else had she been dishonest about? Desperate to explain the contradiction, she came up with yet another excuse. She claimed that Baldoni wasn't in character during the scene and that she had been forced to pretend to like him. But let's be real, Blake is literally an actress. Pretending to like someone is one of the most basic parts of the job.
How right-wing influencers are weaponizing the fight to take down #MeToo. Boy, she really doesn't stop, does she? This being Taylor Lorenz.
It made no sense. It was just another attempt to dodge responsibility and shift the blame. Legally, this was a massive problem for Blake. If the jury found even one lie in her testimony, they could dismiss everything else she said. And since she had already been caught lying multiple times, her entire statement was at risk of being thrown out. She might have believed she could rewrite history and manipulate public opinion, but instead, she ended up destroying her own credibility. By the time the real trial begins, there may be nothing left of her case to believe.
The public is entitled to see different court papers. Everything's supposed to be public, right? Freedom of Information Act, you're supposed to be public. But in certain cases like this, sure.
If that happens, no one will believe a word she says. But Blake still didn't learn from her mistakes. Every time she got caught, she came up with a new story to cover the old one, only making things worse. It was like watching someone dig a hole, realize they were stuck, and then panic, digging even faster instead of climbing out. Everyone else could see the disaster unfolding, except her. Even Hollywood insiders, who usually defend celebrities no matter what, started looking at Blake's lawsuit and seeing it for what it was. A complete embarrassment.
Good point there. Blake Lively wanted to see 2.5 years of documents going back with phone records for everyone that is in her lawsuit. Well, she wants protection from her own sources.
It was such a disaster that even Hollywood's usual power players couldn't defend her. Blake had plenty of chances to walk away, but she kept pushing forward. And now, there's no way out. She tried to handle this lawsuit with her usual star power, but the law doesn't care about fame. It cares about facts, and her so-called facts just didn't hold up. Meanwhile, Ryan Reynolds must be regretting every second of this mess. He built his entire career on being a likable, charismatic figure, but now he's tangled up in a lawsuit that's become a public embarrassment and a running joke in the media.
But finding out, did he harass her or not?
They assumed their connections and influence would be enough to cover up the truth, but it didn't work. People saw right through it and realized there was no real evidence behind any of Blake's claims. At one point, Blake reportedly considered just throwing money at the problem, a common celebrity tactic to make trouble disappear. But that kind of strategy doesn't work in court, especially when the judge is actually paying attention. Judges. don't take kindly to attempts to buy a favorable outcome. Blake became so desperate that she even requested something called an attorney's eyes-only protection order, a last-ditch effort to keep certain information hidden.
We will have to see what happens if this goes to court, and we don't know that yet. Most lawyers that I've spoken to think that they will settle out of court. I think only 3% of all cases goes to.
She wanted certain pieces of evidence to be hidden, not just from the public, but even from the judge and the defendant. That raises the obvious question, why? Why would anyone want to keep crucial evidence away from the very people deciding? The case? It seemed like she was trying to bury something so damaging that it could completely destroy her reputation. Adding to the chaos, rumors began circulating that someone had offered a staggering $100 million bribe to keep everything quiet. That's not just hush money. It's a massive sum that suggests serious corruption. If Blake really had secrets, that explosive, this was clear proof she was willing to do anything to keep them from coming to light.
They were not interested in publishing anything about her security, but did bring up that, you know what? Our addresses got leaked. So that's interesting.
Judge Lyman saw right through the scheme and shut it down immediately. He reminded Blake's legal team that courts exist to serve justice, not to grant special treatment to celebrities who think they can buy their way out of trouble. He made it clear that lying to a jury comes with serious consequences. But even then, Blake refused to back down. She tried a new approach, arguing that because of her fame, releasing certain evidence would cause her significant harm. It was obvious, though, that she wasn't really concerned about justice. She was just desperate to protect her image and career at any cost.
Another thing that happened since Blake Lively showed up on the red carpet again on South by Southwest is that all her friends in the media have started to publish positive stories about Blake Lively.
People quickly realized that Blake wasn't afraid of being unfairly judged. She was just terrified of ruining her career. She kept changing her story about a so-called disturbing dance scene, yet the footage showed her smiling, laughing, and completely at ease. Then, she claimed she had been forced to act against her will, but acting is literally her job. None of it added up, and legal experts immediately saw how contradictory her statements were. Then came the rumors that she had been caught using fake witnesses to support her claims against Baldoni. Two actresses allegedly had similar accusations, but there was one major problem. These witnesses didn't seem to exist. No names, no documents, no real proof. Even the media, which thrives on celebrity drama, refused to touch the story because the claims had zero credibility. It became obvious that Blake was just throwing out random accusations, hoping something, anything, would stick to ruin Baldoni's reputation. Even some insiders in Hollywood reportedly found it so absurd that they refused to cover it at all.
And, clearly Justice side didn't care about the medical stuff or the security stuff. They agreed even in that call. That's not what this is about. What this became about was more of this sort of mid-ground issue.
Even The Hollywood Reporter, which initially seemed to support Blake, struggled to defend her anymore. It was clear she was losing control of the narrative, turning into such a toxic figure that no PR team wanted to handle her mess. One of the most bizarre accusations against Baldoni became a complete joke. Blake's team actually tried to claim he was too nice. Yes, they argued that his kindness, like giving clothes to the homeless and encouraging positive emails, was somehow a red flag. They even labeled it toxic positivity. It was beyond ridiculous. Instead of making Baldoni look bad, it made Blake's team look desperate. The backlash was immediate. Candace Owens even mocked the entire situation, joking that it was like suing someone for being too happy. At this point, Blake's strategy was obvious. Throw out more absurd claims, twist the truth even further, and hope something stuck. But nothing did. The more she tried to spin the story, the more people saw right through it.
The judge reminds both parties that the violation of any term of the protective order that he is putting in place is punishable by sanctions, including contempt of court.
Blake ended up looking like someone willing to use every trick in the book to destroy another person's reputation. Things got so bad that she and Ryan reportedly hired former CIA agents, specialists in burying secrets and controlling information, to clean up the mess. If she needed them, it meant there was something massive to hide. But even the best spin doctors in the world couldn't fix what she had done to herself. She had told so many lies and fabricated so many stories that no PR strategy could save her. Even Leslie Sloan PR, one of the most powerful crisis management firms, tried to step away from her case. When a firm dedicated to repairing reputations refuses to work with you, it's a sign that the damage is beyond repair. Meanwhile, rumors spread that Blake and Ryan were scrambling to block Taylor Swift's private messages from being revealed in court. If those texts had helped her case, she would have shared them immediately. The fact that she fought to keep them hidden only fueled speculation that they contained damning evidence, possibly exposing how Hollywood elites manipulate executives, influence the media, and twist the narrative behind the scenes. At this point, it wasn't just about Blake versus Baldoni. It was about how Hollywood power players operate in the shadows, using their influence to control outcomes. But it was too late. The secrets were out, and the public saw Blake for what she was, someone willing to fabricate evidence and lie in court to get her way. No matter what legal maneuver she attempted next, her credibility was destroyed. If the case actually goes to trial, she has almost no chance of winning. A jury will remember all the contradictions, the misleading claims, and the special treatment she demanded. People don't take kindly to false accusations, and Hollywood's silence spoke volumes. Even industry insiders, who usually stand by their own, were hesitant to be associated with her. Some even whispered that her career was finished. This lawsuit became a lesson for everyone watching. You can try to manipulate the system, but eventually the truth catches up. Blake might have thought she could control the narrative, but every move she made only exposed more dishonesty. Bribes didn't work. Legal teams couldn't cover it up. Attempts to bury evidence failed. She kept changing her story, but each version made her look worse. She assumed the public would believe her just because she was famous, but people paid attention to the facts instead. They saw the video where she was smiling and carefree, contradicting her own claims of distress. They noticed how she expanded her complaint from a short filing into a sprawling 180-page document, seemingly in an attempt to confuse rather than clarify. They even saw how she tried to frame Baldoni's kindness as suspicious, which only made her own motives look more questionable. Her desperation became obvious when she tried to withhold documents not just from Baldoni, but from the judge himself. Who does that unless they have something to hide? And then came the failed attempt to suppress Taylor Swift's texts, a move that all but confirmed Blake and Ryan feared the fallout if those messages ever saw the light of day. Some suspected the text might expose secret discussions about taking down Baldoni's career, using their industry clout to blacklist him. Whether or not those messages ever come out, the damage is done. Public opinion has turned against Blake. She orchestrated a spectacle to ruin Baldoni's reputation, but in the end, she destroyed her own. What started as a calculated legal attack spiraled into an embarrassing display of deceit, arrogance, and desperation. She wanted to control the narrative, but she lost control completely. Now, she's left with a shattered reputation, a lawsuit that highlights her dishonesty, and a public that no longer trusts her. Hollywood may smile to her face, but behind closed doors, they see her as a liability. No one wants to be associated with someone who weaponized lies and manipulation in such an obvious way. This case also exposed a harsh truth about Hollywood. Beneath the glitz and glamour, some will go to extreme lengths to rewrite reality. Blake tried every tactic, false evidence, media influence, and even high-level operatives, to shape the story to her advantage. But no matter how powerful you are, the truth has a way of breaking through. In the end, Blake Lively thought she was the mastermind of a perfectly crafted narrative. Instead, she became the villain in her own unraveling story.